But welcome to Barrels of Opportunity, insights from Cooperage leaders on innovations, knowledge, and barrel selection for distillery growth and expansion. Here are our barrel experts. Cameron, why don't you start? Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Cameron Feek. I'm with Speyside Bourbon Cooperage. I've been with Speyside right now for about 2 years. Prior to that, I had a background at MGP Ingredients. I was there for a little over 10 years. I started out in supply chain, and my last role there, I was the director of sales, and now I'm leading business development and sales for Speyside. I'm both the new and I'm taking a larger portion of the used business as well.
Okay, Chad.
Chad Spalding, Independent Stave Company, 27 years with Independent Stave. Barrel expert, as Melissa used, is very loosely connected to me usually. So I've just been around a little while in the industry. So, yeah, ISC, you know who we are. So,
Zach.
Zach Zimlich with Zach Cooperage. So we got started. We're a third-generation family Cooperage. Started in 1990. We're located about 10 miles south of Bardstown. Started by my father and grandfather. My grandfather has 45 years experience in the Cooperage space. From his days at Brown-Forman, finished up his career as president of Jack Daniels, and then he went into partnership with my father Bruce, and I guess by proxy, I've been in the barrel industry for most of my life.
Thank you, guys. And I'm Melissa Zoeller. I'm the executive director of the Associated Cooperage Industries of America. If you haven't heard of us, we are the trade association for all things barrel. And if you are not a member of us and you deal in all things barrel or allied to the Mighty Barrel, please contact me and we will get you involved. These guys have been established members for a very long time and we're thankful to have them. So, guys, ready to get started?
Sure.
Okay. All right. We'll start with barrels and growth of a distillery. So this is our first question. When a distillery is looking to scale up, what are the key factors they should consider in choosing the right barrels for their growth?
You want me to lead that one?
go ahead.
All right. So I think as you really starting to kind of scale up, I think the biggest thing that you need is consistency. So the barrel isn't going to do all the work for you. So it's going to start with the product that you're putting in the barrel. So it's one, having the consistency, and it's also going to be having a vision and future of what your product is in the long run. So, and then there is so many different factors with the barrel. It's not just the barrel, the wood, it can be the warehouse, climate, it can be different factors of wood that we'll get into later in the kind of questionnaire. But from my take, it's consistency and having a vision of what your product looks like, at the end of maturation.
I guess I'll go next. Yeah, I'd probably echo in on the consistency standpoint. I think quality assurance is definitely another measure that super important to take into consideration. Make sure that the methods that people are using are repeatable and can ensure that, in 6 months to a year from now, you're going to be still getting that same product that you're ordering.
Yeah, so we usually try and kind of back our way into a barrel type. At ISC, we have Andrew Webrink, our R&D spirits director. That's super helpful whenever a customer or a new customer would come to me and try and, decide on which barrel to go with. So we try and just kind of reverse engineer into that barrel. Where are you going to be aging? What's your mash bill? What type of distillation system you have? What's your aging environment look like? What do you want your product to look like at the end of 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years down the road? Because, a barrel that you want, possibly want to kind of come out with in 2 years is probably not the same barrel that maybe your 8-year-old product should be in. So we will try and just kind of back our way into that based on multiple conversations, knowing all the knowledge that we can, gather all that up front on what we can get from the customer. And then, just use all those details and typically try and suggest, something that's different at first. So if you're brand new, certainly lay down a few different types of barrels to see which type of barrel is going to work best for you, whether it be changing up the toast and char profile, changing up the wood age, lots of factors involved in that. But we always want to make sure that you have all the variables that we can try and cover, going into that barrel.
Thanks. Okay, what specific knowledge or expertise around barrels is essential for distillery owners and operators who are looking to expand their offerings?
You want to start on this one, Zach?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I definitely think that everybody's trying to differentiate themselves. Everybody's looking for ways that they can push a premium product. There's definitely things that we can pull the triggers on to, utilize different toast levels, different char profiles, even different stave profiles, in order to be able to differentiate your product and expand product lines. For everybody, everybody's trying to figure out ways to innovate. So super important to keep a portfolio of things and experiments in the rotation.
Do you want me to go, Cameron?
Sure.
Innovation with us certainly starts again with Andrew, who absolutely loves to delve into, what type of options we can offer certain customers. But we also key on, the fact that he's probably laid down about 6,000 experimental barrels over the last 5 or 6 years. So we've laid down experiments. We know most of the time what a barrel will do, how it will react. And we can usually sit that in front of customers and let them taste samples of whiskeys out of our libraries that have came out of these experimental barrels at 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year. So they can get an idea in their head going into it. They don't go in there necessarily blind at all. Now, is it apples to apples? Is what their distillate and how it's going to react to our barrel the exact same? Not likely. But it will give them a flavor direction or profile, on what they can, to a certain extent, expect out of that barrel as it starts to age. And we keep those experiments going for 4 years and sometimes longer. So we have those distillates. We have the raw distillate. We have, 6-month-old, 1-month-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and we can literally sit that in front of them and they can, taste that product and kind of get an idea of what to expect moving forward.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of options out there that even kind of master distillers, so to speak, don't really know about. So, you have your basic chars, toast, top, side, those type of basic options. But then you can get into your kiln dried, non-kiln dried, your seasoned staves, storage location, humidity, barometric pressure, however you say it, elevation, different species of oaks, different varieties of oak, where the oak came from Appalachia or Missouri, or whether it's Hungarian or French. So I think just being able to give all of the different options to your distillers, especially around the new distilleries when they're starting up, and then being able to have kind of an expectation, as Andrew does a lot with ISC, and being able to give guidance of if there is a certain option, what that's going to do in the end run, and being able to just give each one of those options and results of what to expect to the distillers.
Great. How does barrel management play a role in maintaining the quality and consistency when a distillery might be growing?
Certainly barrel management, yeah. It seemed that managing barrels for lots of folks over the last 5 years is kind of a hot topic. And, how many do you lay down? How many are you going to need? How many are you going to need in 5 years, 4 years, 6 years? You certainly don't want to lay down too many barrels, although barrel suppliers would love for you to lay down too many barrels. But, you can get yourself in a spot to where you're going to get into some aged whiskeys, because a whiskey will certainly change, from 4 years to 5 to 6 to 8 to 10, as it grows older. We think that the barrel type is you need to keep that to fall in line with your barrel aging regime. Like, so if you're going to be at somewhere between 2 to 4 years old or 4 to 6 years old, then, here's what you should do and here's how you should do it. And just slowly grow into that. Now, growth is certainly subjective, and it's strictly tied to your sales and what your sales outlooks should be. So it's manageable in-house. Certainly, you can't just lay it down, and it's not going to all be the same as you start to dump it, and know that consistency certainly matters, and it will change, from month to month, year to year, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So from a sourcing aspect, the market's completely changed in the last 18 months. 18 months ago, people were begging for barrels, and now I'm begging to sell barrels. So, but having a relationship with each cooperage, if you're the distillery, and having those long-term relationships when the market does turn, that's one thing that all distillers should have. From a managing aspect, this is probably more for the larger distilleries, but making sure you're testing the barrels, rotating your barrels if you can, and then having, consistency of your product as you test those, and knowing how your product's aging. Then from an aging standpoint, it's trying to have the correct amount of inventory, which has been a challenge for most distilleries of any size over the last few years. Over 23 and 24, there was so much distillate laid down, and so many distilleries are now aging down. But at some point, you're not going to be able to do that. And then again, all goes back to my first comment of consistency, is if you're releasing product that says 2 years old on the bottle, but you're having to use 4-year-old, and then when that valve shuts off and you're having to go back to 2 years old, it's not going to be a consistent product. So just being able to, project your sales and manage throughout, I think is crucial.
Yeah, I guess, if we can all echo the same message on, everybody realizes the situation of barrel inventories and bulk whiskey out on the market. I think it's also an opportunity for a lot of people to experiment around with lots of different finishing techniques, a lot of different experimental stuff. So from that standpoint, it's a good opportunity. It seems like there's plenty of affordable liquid out on the market, and also makes for good opportunities to run some experiments while everybody's got a lot of time on their hands. So I think that's definitely a beneficial way for some people to approach their barrel management strategy.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen, for that category? Okay, moving on to barrel selections for expanding offerings. As a distillery expands its product line, what different types of barrels should they consider for various spirits, and how do you match the barrel to the spirit?
I think that's, again, starts out with a vision of what you're looking for. As cooperages, we're here to help kind of drive the distillers to kind of the matching profile that they're aspiring towards. But some of the different, I mentioned these earlier, but using European oak, using aged staves, different toast profiles. Maybe if you're able to, let's say, mature your barrels longer than 4 to 6 years, you might want to look at a lower char level. There's even different experiments, whether you want to put them in different places in the warehouse, or even using top fill versus side fill. But again, then I'd say those are your most basic options. But then if you're looking for, different oxidation levels in your barrels, whether you want to use a tight grain, there's some, I've heard of distilleries where they may be in Southern Kentucky and they want to age in Northern Kentucky. Or I've heard even moving it out of state. So after it's aged, I think for 18 months in Kentucky, you can actually move Kentucky bourbon out, whether you want to move them north to slow down the aging profile, or if you want to move those barrels south down here in Texas where it's going to age much rapid. So there's a lot of different varieties, but again, that's something we can coach through. Our R&D teams can coach through. But I do think the kind of options are endless. As just having that vision, though, is crucial for the distillery to have.
Yeah, I would definitely say the options can be endless for sure. And that's why it's always great to keep a great relationship with your cooper. So, I'm very hands-on every day at the cooperage. So one of my passion projects is playing around with toast, playing around with different styles of wood, different aging profiles. A lot of the distilleries that we work with at Zach Cooperage, they like to see how can we be, able to do something that's different from everything else on the market. And that's what really drives innovation and continues to push the limit on, how bourbon as a market and what offerings are really successful and, take off. So absolutely keeping a close relationship with your cooper, seeing what's the newest possibility out there and, seeing what is out there, always keeping a pulse on that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, certainly echoing, exactly what both of them said, just the different in the current market, not to say that anything goes, but almost anything goes now. So where, a few years ago we could say, well, we kind of don't have time to mess with that right now. We have time now. So if your cooper tells you no, give me a call. We will try it. No, it's not a sales pitch, but it's a sales pitch now. So yeah, wood types, seasoning, the different toast and char levels, certainly. If you want to increase the surface area inside a barrel, we certainly have options for that, spiral cut barrels, wave state barrels, lots of cool things to play around with. So yeah, if you're in a little bit of a lull and you want to lay some stuff, real cool stuff down, either to finish in if you're in the market of sourcing whiskey from somebody, and we have lots of ways to finish whiskeys in different types of barrels, or even some of the oak solution stuff that we have that we're not talking about right now because this is barrel talk, but there's lots of options out there currently. So just keep an open mind, and none of all of it's all natural that we're working with here. So it's all wood. It's not you're not doing voodoo magic stuff. This is all natural stuff that can take your product into a totally different direction, even in most of the time for the better.
That kind of rolls into the size and shape of a barrel influence too. So you guys want to talk on that when it comes to the maturation process and the flavor profile of the spirit inside?
Yeah, so this gets more technical, and I'm not a scientist by any means, but depending on the size, whether up north they'll use smaller barrels to rapid age because of the climate, it does slow down the aging process. But I'd say if you're in the Midwest, you use a smaller barrel to kind of rapid mature your product. Down here in Texas, they use a lot of hogsheads or even butts just to slow down the aging. So typically the smaller the barrel staves and the bigger the head, the more oxidation it's going to get and the faster it's going to mature. So the larger the cask, typically the slower it does mature.
Yeah, I think for all of us up here, we're primarily doing 200 liter for when it comes to new bourbon barrels. There are ways to manipulate the surface area inside of the barrel by using, different planers that can, dig out more grooves and create additional surface area. And, that's good for people to keep their same format. If you're in a 200 liter, 53 gallon style rick house, or that's what all your palletized storage is at, those are good alternatives to increase your oak extraction rates without necessarily having to, reorder how your warehousing is laid out.
Yeah, so we don't make the smaller barrels either. So anything 53 gallons and up, mostly just work with the folks that want to, maybe try and, the Texas folks are certainly one of the first ones that started doing this, is buying those larger format barrels to kind of help slow down that extraction rate. And I think it's working for them. They, have put more and more of those in their warehouses. So those seem to be working really well down here. So it's just where you're at, where you're located, what you have space for. Certainly matters. If you're a smaller distillery and you don't have a lot of space, then you may have to go with a smaller barrel at first, or you're still small enough to where a 10 or 25 or 30 gallon barrel is going to be all you can make in several weeks. So the thing you don't want to do is certainly order big barrels or larger barrels or even 53s if you can't make enough to fill those up fairly quickly, because they're an empty barrel, as we all know, is not a good barrel. So they have a short shelf life when they're sitting around empty. So you need to get those things filled up. So if you're a smaller distillery, it certainly makes sense to go into some smaller barrels if that's your plan, and get with a small barrel cooperage and work with those guys. And there's plenty of good ones around. So find those guys and use them up for sure. But the 53s are just what we know as a panel up here for the most part. So they're tried and true, kind of the standard in the industry.
And something you can do from an external force if you have to is also, we're seeing more and more climate controlled warehouses, especially on the smaller, craft side. You can, even a room like this can hold a decent amount of barrels, and it doesn't take, it can be more cost effective to buy your 53s and put them in a climate control rather than trying to buy larger barrels at double the price. So there are some external factors you can do as far as airflow as well. So that's stuff that we can help on the back end, is just coaching through those.
Okay. Quality control and barrel aging. What are the most common mistakes distilleries make when it comes to aging spirits in barrels, and how can they avoid them?
Yeah, I think one thing is maybe sampling too often in those things and popping the bungs out, and because there are exchanges going on in those barrels, and they need to build pressure. And if you're constantly opening them up and getting samples out and creating more headspace, and you have to be patient. Barrel aging is a long game, as we all mostly understand in here. That if you start messing around with the environment inside the barrel, which has to build pressure to get exchanges going on, you could start to kind of mess around with flavor profile. It's going to eventually come out of that barrel. So just stay patient. I know you want to share with your friends what your 5-month-old tastes like. Your 5-month-old's not going to tell you right away where you're going. Let's let that thing keep aging, building that pressure. Quit popping the bung out, getting your own samples for your home bar. That would be my one and only kind of patience. Leave it in the barrel. The barrel's there to age this thing out. It's going to take a little while. There are certain exchanges that have to happen, some oxidation, some oxidation. There's all kinds of stuff got to happen inside that barrel, and it can't if you're always messing with the inside environment of it.
Yeah, I think what I see mostly is probably, and I just touched on it, though, is improper airflow. And it doesn't matter the size of your warehouse, but having the proper airflow can have a extreme factor on both the humidity and temperature within whatever the warehouse space is. So, that can be done through air ducts, through windows, through, you've seen the new K-Rack systems. There's all different ways to kind of influence the airflow. But I can't tell you how many times, especially smaller distilleries, people pretty much have these things in garages or just in a closed off a room, so to speak, whether it's a steel building, whether it's a cinder block building, but just absolutely zero airflow, and it kills the maturation.
One thing that, I agree, patience is one of the primary mistakes I think people make. So my wife, she spent about 5 years at a different company selling finishing barrels, and one of the primary things that she would see is that her customers would, be very eager, have a, say a porter or sherry finish barrel, and after 3 or 6 months, they, are eager to get a, finished product out onto market. But I think a lot of people, especially with their finishing products, are probably maybe a little bit too eager. I think you'd be surprised at how well something can come out after, 2-3 years. And we had a sherry finish not too long ago, and it's very well done. And one of the differences, and it had sat for 3 years, and a lot of people are not finishing that long for fortified wine casks.
I think we touched on a lot of quality control, but do you guys have anything to add in that sector? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on to sustainability and sourcing. Sustainability is becoming a key concern in the industry. What steps can distilleries take to source their barrels in an environmentally responsible way? Are there any changes in the availability or sourcing of high-quality wood for barrels? And how should distilleries plan for that?
Well, certainly, there's plenty of white oak. I know there's been some stuff written out there that, that even this industry, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny part of what's being pulled out of a white oak forest. So we're highly sustainable because we don't have to go out and replant the natural, the oak trees. They replenish themselves. As far as ISC is concerned, we certainly work with all of the states that we pull out of. We're SFI certified, so sustainable forest industry. So we work with the state departments and the loggers, all the way back to the landowners. Now, so the landowners are hard to educate because a lot of times the landowners are strictly only in it just to make money. And I get that, I don't own any property, but if I did, if it had trees on it, that's what I would do too. But education is a huge thing. So we work with our loggers, number one, because those are the ones that we work with directly to help, in hopes that they can help us educate the landowner all the way back to that. So, going in and cutting their forest sustainably, meaning we're not going to come in and clear coat their oak forest and use all that. We want to come in and select, good high quality stave logs and, and teach them why we want to cut these and why we don't want to cut those, and what's going to happen to the rest of the tree once we do, cut that tree. So we're very heavily involved with that side of it in all the states that we're in, and all of our partners, our loggers and our suppliers. And then with the University of Kentucky, we're certainly, those guys are big on sustainability and the White Oak Initiative and Genome and things like that. So we're partners with those guys too, and learning more about the white oak and what's going to help us in the future, because, our company's been around over 100 years in this industry, and the next generations are coming on board. So, we want to be around that much longer. So we have to have white oak another 100 years from now. So we're, it's our lifeblood.
Yeah, I know, again, a lot of people say, what's the sustainability of white oak long term? But if you actually look at it, there's been studies that there's more white oak today than what there was 400 years ago in America. But it does start with the loggers, and then we have a log buying team of 30 people, and having those relationships and making sure that the loggers are, sustainable cutting. I know Speyside pledges to plant at least one tree for every tree that's cut down that we use per year. Our logging team works with, the University of Virginia. We do a lot of extensive planning. Then I'm drawing a blank on the new European. I don't know, you got the geo. There's a term for it, but it ties into being able to pinpoint the exact tree that was cut down for Europe. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but the long term is there's plenty of white oak at even the current rates that were being cut, I'd say 18 months ago. And now that it's slowed down, the outlook is, it's years and years out. It'll be past my kids' generations.
Yeah, I think everybody, up here and, across the broader Cooperage industry is very aware of the sustainability push that we're all, heavily trying to contribute to. From our standpoint, we're sourcing all of our white oak as locally as possible, trying to support our local Kentucky loggers. And for us, a lot of our logging relationships go back decades, and ensuring that all those loggers are practicing proper forest management. These are just a few steps that, could really ensure the longevity of our forest for, everybody's future generations. Beyond that, I think that the health of the white oak forests are, in very good tact right now. And if we continue to push forward, I think, we can make a lot healthier forests. And I think future is bright for the white oak population.
Absolutely. Okay. Moving on to innovations. Do any of you have anything to add about significant innovations in the cooperage world that you've seen in recent years?
For us, we produced our first logs in May of 2016. And at that time, and really for the last 9 years, we've been focused on making what we consider the highest grade commodity white oak barrel there is. We really weren't doing anything outside the box. So just recently we have we hired an innovation director. So we're looking at all the different varieties. We're doing studies with a couple different distilleries, trying to build a library similar to like ACIA has, and Andrew. In my past life, I've done a lot of work with Andrew. What I'd say probably the most innovative thing we've recently put in is a large infrared toasting line that can handle over 500,000 barrels a year if needed. It just gives you what we call the Big Mac, so you have that consistent toasting on every barrel. And then we've just started dabbling in more on the Hungarian, French, and Spanish oak as well. But it's kind of crazy that a lot of these innovations are brand new to us, even though we're a large producer of white oak. So I'm excited for the future. But right now, this is the time, if anyone is looking to do anything innovative, because the market is slow, it's your best opportunity. And there's a lot of opportunities for partnerships on some of these things and studies that we can even help lead. So I'd say the infrared for us is right now.
Yeah, I'd say over the past several years, I think everybody's made a lot bigger push into the toasting side of things. Everybody realizes how much flavor you can extract through a deeper toast. So that's one of the things that we've been really pushing further into. For us, our toasting unit is very hands-on. Takes an operator to monitor the situation and make adjustments accordingly. But beyond that, we also have been pushing more with being able to push the sustainability side of things, with people being able to use that toasting technology on spent casks and try to rejuvenate those. So not only is that a way to, extend the life of your barrels, but also try to extract any other flavors out of them. So that's one thing that we've seen some people trying to innovate with, both on the sustainability side and flavor side of things.
I think most of our innovation most recently is inside the cooperages. So how can we better and more consistently make a product with new machinery possibly, and for no other reason other to be safer in our cooperages, and to be able to make a barrel at the best cost and best value that we can make it for our customers. Because moving forward, after we get through whatever we're in right now, people are just going to be like, look, what's the best value on the market? And for us to be able to innovate inside our cooperages to make a barrel at the best cost value that we can make and pass that savings along to our customers is probably going to be crucial here in this next little run.
Anything to add, gentlemen? If not, we'll open it up to Q&A. If anyone has any questions.
Yes, sir. Not for us. No, I mean, we planned and started sitting that, and one advantage we had to that is we're a wine barrel cooperage as well, and most all wine barrel aged seasoning is longer, 18, 24, 36 months. So we had always set that aside, and now that the wine business is kind of down too, so we have plenty of yard aged material. For us, certainly, we have plenty of that in the queue, sitting there, and some of it's getting older, and but right now, we're in great shape as far as aged material in the yard for sure.
Yeah. At Speyside, we have a great inventory too right now. We probably have too much aged wood right now, so we're having to take some of the 36-month wood and either offer it at a discounted price, or we'll filter it in to our standard barrels. So typically what we see is after 36 months, that wood will start deteriorating, and then after 48, you really don't, you can use it, but it really starts to deteriorate, and you start losing inches.
Yeah, I think everybody's in the same position on inventories and air season staves.
Well,
There's a lot.
So I know I'll answer the last question first. So on our side, we're not working with any loggers to do any like hybrid growth, so to speak. We've just recently entered the Chinquapin arena. I probably have enough Chinquapin to do under 1,000 barrels right now. But if that's something that, does start to take off, we can definitely source those barrels. Chinquapin's been used for decades. A lot of the Chinquapin that's been cut is just used as tied into Corcus albas, and you don't even know you're getting it. If you do use a true Chinquapin barrel, you will get a unique flavor that pairs really well with rye. How we verify that is everything is barcoded and stamped from the time it's brought the log. So the log comes in. So you could come to our yard and you would see that one pallet of Chinquapin. I'm trying, there was just a lot of questions.
Yeah, I think, all of us have aging yards out there, and everything's barcoded and marked. So, you basically just have to take the word and trust your Cooper partner in that you're getting what they're telling you that you ordering, or what you want. As far as some of the products, that have been in those, our whiskey library has lots of samples. So if there's anything that you can dream up and you want to reach out and say, hey, have you guys tried this? Over 6,000 barrels, we've tried a lot of different things. So maybe we have, maybe we haven't, but we're always up for a good chore anyway.
Yeah. To harp on the Chinquapin, I think all of us up here have experience with Chinquapin. The side of things where being able to experiment and do different types of things as far as like top of the log, middle of the log, bottom of the log. We haven't necessarily gotten that deep into it, but we do have a small mill that we do run experimental stuff on for. So, for example, I've had some customers come to me and say, hey, I have 70 logs on my farm, and I want to be able to use that for an estate-grown whiskey barrel. So we've taken several requests on like that, been able to process the logs into the staves and heading material, assemble barrels. Currently have several barrels aging at different locations for different customers doing stuff like that.
And I will say from our standpoint, for the first 5 years or so, we only bought the butt, but now we buy the second cut. We don't buy any third cuts, but when we just tie it in, it's all mixed in. Part of that was as the industry took off and the whiskey boom, we just had to get as much wood as possible for one, and it also was cost effective, and we were able to route that back down to our customers. It was funny because as we were going through the questions, I said, I know this question's going to come up. I do believe it's all subjective. I believe in my mind it has a bigger impact on your warehouse rather than the actual side fill, top fill. There's warehouses out there that are top fill that are holding 200,000 barrels, and then there's side fill barrels out there that are holding, there might only be 50 barrels. So I think it gets almost more into a conversation of the size of your warehouse, and then going back to my airflow comment earlier, rather than top fill versus side fill. So
we've actually done an experiment, brick rack house versus a palletized, and we weren't looking at any flavor profile specifics on this, only interested in basically the recovery of what happens in a rack house versus a palletized. And we found that over a period of 4 years, it's very minimal, the difference in the recovery out of that 4-year-old barrel in the rack house versus the palletized. So what did the whiskey taste like? That was the customer's concerns. But so it certainly that depends on who you talk to, of course. But a barrel was not designed to stand on its end. That's a lot of pressure on that bottom head, crow's chime area of a barrel. When palletized warehouses got more, highly used, I think it made us a better cooper, because we had to ensure that, everything was super, super tight. Knowing that people were going to, use these more and more, it's really helped us kind of dial in and make a tighter barrel, I do believe, as a company. And so, and even, whether it be top fill or a palletized side fill barrel, which there's, thousands of them in warehouses, even the bunghole itself, we had to take a real good look at it and ensure that, it's precise and clean and on point at all times, because if somebody puts, that much heart and soul into that barrel of whiskey, we want to make sure that, as a cooper, our job is to ensure that, what you put in there stays in there as long as it can. We're consumers at the end, so we want to make sure all that good whiskey comes out. That's for sure.
Not missing a drop.
Yeah, I guess, from a physics standpoint, depending on how high you're stacking, and the airflow going around it, there's a lot of different variables, and it would vary from, climate to, where it's geographically being aged at, but definitely depending on how high you're going up, can definitely affect how much weight is being put on those barrel staves, and especially that bottom barrel with all that pressure on the bilge, it can definitely lead to some either losses from that standpoint, but also pretty considerable damage to the barrel, just depending on how much force is applied.
At Speyside, we haven't dabbled in any of that, to be honest. I think right now is when, in the future with our new innovation department, we may see different things like that, but we're just now starting to dive kind of deeper into expanding our offerings and understandings, that type of stuff. I can't speak on the other cooperages.
Doesn't sound like anything we've done, that's for sure.
No, I can't say that I've done that yet.
I'll get Andrew right on that.
Well, I'll take that up to and let them know that question was asked.
Anyone else?
On our end, I've heard of people wanting to buy thicker staves, especially in Texas where it's hotter, down in Louisiana where it's hotter. We kind of keep everything right at that inch or 15/16. The one thing that we try to do is stave count. So typically we only average 24 to 26 staves. We don't use any staves less than an inch. So that's kind of from our selling point, plug for myself. So, but we don't do any differences outside of our spec for stave thickness.
For us, we've not deviated. We've always run it at an inch. and that's how all of our equipment's currently set up for. You know, when you start getting a thicker stave, you can, you know, really put a lot more stress on your equipment for the manufacturing process. But, you know, it's not something I've come across yet, but not something that, you know, I wouldn't, you know, necessarily, not something I've gone down yet, but potentially could be something that could be looked at.
Yeah, we've dabbled in just the opposite, a high piece count barrel with thin staves, which some folks want with, you know, most of your exchanges are happening through the joints and not through the stave. So if you shorten your piece count, you know, make a 24 piece barrel or something, then yeah, the opportunities are gonna be, you know, lessened more than making a thicker stave. So a lot of the oxidation that happens is going through the joints versus directly through the stave. So, but if you want a low piece count, thicker stave barrel, Patrick, give me a call.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks to all y'all.
Thank you. I appreciate it.